Fragments of silicon, reminding you that alarm clocks are necessary for the morning.
Yeah. That's in reference to the fact that, well, one of our members is most likely overslept. Don't actually know what happened to Golix, but given that I forgot to give out a reminder yesterday, he probably isn't awake right now. Either that or he's taking a very long shower. Considering I've called him twice now and no answer. Anyway, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon, the European interviews. Up this week, uh, okay, you'll forgive me if I mispronounce this. Um, we have Mihokovic of Little Green Man Gaming here.
Yeah, it's pretty correct. Well, hello.
Okay, good, good. Always worried when we get not so much unconventional names, but names we don't really come across over here because we don't know how to pronounce them. Anyway,
I don't know either.
yeah. Um, anyway, let's see. We usually start things by getting to know the person behind the game, studio, whatever. And we like to start things by asking how you got interested in video games.
Well, actually, it was a quite a long time ago when we were just kids. The game industry actually was only starting to develop, and the games were something very cool, very new, very special, different than anything that existed before. They offered a lot of freedom, imagination, and stuff, everything you like when you're a child. So besides that, there was a surge of Star Trek and Star Wars movies at the time, and all of that just gave us. We just fell in love with space, with games, with everything. We didn't know we're gonna be making games one day. We just wanted to play games as much as possible and annoy our parents by not leaving computers ever. So the creation of games came later when we first played the games for a good 15, 16 years. Then we started playing in modding tools because then you get teenage years, you become arrogant, you decide that games are they just suck, you can do it better, and then you want to change it, you want to dismantle it. So that's what we did for the next couple of years. And then we got even more arrogant, deciding, oh well, we can do better thing than this. And then we started to create our first game. It was much harder, longer, and worse experience than we ever thought, but it was also fun. So that's the way it started, basically out of fun, not as a upfront business plan.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon story on this program. Many people we've interviewed got into the business via not just fun, but also like modding or programming or something along those lines. But that does belie the question. Did you like ever go to the university to develop your video gaming skills, or was it all amateur?
The four original members of the team, none of them are actually anything informal education, anything remotely connected to computers or programming or anything. For example, I can speak for myself. I'm personally a history teacher, so I have absolutely nothing to do with computers. At least I didn't have anything to do with computers, unless I only played games, nothing else. And all the rest, I was a fan of all these things, meddling with computers, programming, creating stuff, scripting languages, and everything. So actually, it's just something that developed along the way, and all four original members are actually self-educated people. And as a studio started to spread later, then we acquired people that are actually educated formally in programming or computer science or something like that. So now we are about 70% of the team is actually, like, let's say, professional developers. All the others are even more crazy than them, but they're not professionally educated. They are more like lone wolves that learned all the traits of that business themselves.
And have you? Has there been any sort of divide in terms of skill set between the, let's say, the self-taught and the university educated?
Well, yeah, of course. There is always that thinking, but it's not very pronounced. It's not emphasized too much in our team. But yes, of course, people that came with formal education, they have a better starting point. That's absolutely true. But sometimes they also think they actually know everything, so they will be much better at that. But from my experience, it actually doesn't depend on that so much. It depends more on motivation. If you actually want to do that, if you want to upgrade your knowledge, if you want to learn, because this is we all know that this industry is changing incredibly fast. And if you're up to the challenge, if you want to learn new things, you can advance very fast without formal knowledge. If you don't have sufficient motivation, then 10 colleges will not help you, because you're gonna have a good knowledge, but you're gonna get stuck at one place and you're not gonna advance anywhere because you don't want to. So it pretty much leveled up after a while, in our studio at least.
It's an interesting perspective, certainly. And right, so how did you make the transition from amateur developers to, well, a business, basically?
Hardly. That was a very hard process, actually. I mean, first of all, none of us had any clue about the business. That's simply the truth. Nobody had a private business before, so that's something we had to learn along the way. We did a million mistakes, a million things that we're sorry about, but we always succeeded we kept the momentum ahead. So that actually helped. And the main reason behind it was first game that was actually a really good success, that released enough budget to actually start working professionally. Second good incentive were our wives, because after let's say 7 or 8 years of development, of amateur development, where you work for 12 hours a day without any salary, that starts to annoy your wife. So you simply have to do something about it, because you can't keep doing that all your life. So luckily, the success of the second game, that was really good success, and our knowledge and the fact that we succeeded to find a sufficient number of people when that budget arrived, that actually helped us to make that transition maybe a bit smoother than it would otherwise be. But it was a rocky road, definitely.
Sounds like it. Like, and this was Starpoint Gemini 2.
Yes, yes. That was a first really successful game. The first one was okay, but since it was completely an amateur project, and there was a massive obstacles to push it out to the market, and to do all the follow-up work you have to do with the game. First, we didn't know anything about it. We didn't have actually budget for that. So that was completely, we improvised everything along the way. So it turned out all right. It allowed us to start working more professionally, to get first salaries out there, to buy first real computers, because the entire first game was almost done on calculators. It was ridiculous. So it helped a lot, and things pretty much rolled on themselves later as we get that start. But the road to that first real start was about 6 years. So that part was tricky. The next part was much easier.
In terms of like development or just everything?
Well, everything. It's all connected. you have a way of developing the game, and all the logistics problems are actually affect your development pace and what you can do in the game, the discrepancy between your wishes and what's possible to do. Once you set up the studio and things are starting to look like a normal business, then you probably sorted out the logistics by that time as well. So the production also suffers less, and it starts to roll ahead.
Hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. And right, so shifting a bit, I suppose we should delve into the games themselves. Starting with, for those who might not know, what is the Starpoint Gemini series?
Starpoint Gemini series is, well, I like to call it our vision of Star Trek. That's that was the initial idea with the first game. So we actually always wanted to create an entire universe. So sandbox game was a choice, and that was decided before we made any games. So we always wanted to make a full game experience that included a sandbox system. So you have to have an entire universe, entire world around you, so you can do pretty much what you want. That was the initial idea. And the second idea was, okay, well, we like space. We want to make spaceships. We want to be among the stars. We want to have all these cool weapons and everything. So that was the basic idea. And the choice to have an emphasis on capital ships and everything was direct result of that. And everything after that was actually simply expanding on that idea until the second game. Second game, we went to early access for the first time. And that's when all the mayhem broke out, because we basically tried to give community a chance to deeply impact how the game will look like, what it will play like. And the response was great. So we actually changed huge amounts of game. And the second game was less about what we wanted and more about what community wanted. And that actually turned out to be quite a nice experiment and successful experiment, because we learned that people actually do know what they want to play. They have a pretty good idea what they want, and we simply follow that. And it took us to a place where we didn't thought we'll be, but yeah, it was a good experiment. And Warlords is the same thing, but it's an ultimate experiment where community members actually well, they actually created the entire idea of this game. So that's a step ahead in that direction. So we hope we didn't miss this time as well.
There's certainly a lot to unpack there, like especially in terms of your relationship with your community. I suppose the question is, what was your idea for Starpoint Gemini 2 versus what the community wanted?
Well, to put it short, if it was up to us, it would probably be more 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 fast-paced shooter game, and it would be less, let's say, strategic tactical experience. In the end, it was much more strategic tactic experience, and Warlords will be a hybrid of three genres, which was, in our minds, maybe an insane idea, but we went for it, and the result surprised us as well. It actually works. It can be combined, so it wouldn't be that complicated if it was up to us. That would be the short answer.
I see. Yeah, I've noticed that like Warlords is described as a full-on 4X combat simulator, versus like the other ones, which are more tactical RPG affairs. Like, anyway, for those who don't know what 4X is, that's explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Which was actually drafted first for another space game called Master of Orion. Like, at least this is what I've read. I mean, how is Warlords different from the two other games in your estimation?
Two of the games,
What now?
from two of these competing games, or from our first two games?
Yeah, both. You know, not just what differentiates it from your past games, but what makes it stand out against, say, Sins of a Solar Empire and the like.
Got it, got it. The main reason is the concept. So everything we had in the previous games, this game is quite different in approach, but nothing was left out of the mechanics that we had in the previous games. So basically, if you have a 4X game, strategy game, you have all the standard mechanics, what you expect from a 4X game. It exists here. The primary difference is that in Warlords, you can still play as a direct combat simulation game. Namely, once you have the options to control your territory, your faction, resources, conduct your own research, build your ships, assemble fleets, and everything what you can do on star chart and pretty much standard 4X layout. Once you do that, you can move, you can start pulling strings and play pretty much standard 4X game. The difference is that if you want, you can play it yourself and be included in each of these individual battles yourself. So when you build a fleet and send it to attack something, whatever, that's up to you, you can actually choose to join them. And like in a simulation game, you literally fly with your ships to a certain location in a sandbox universe, which can be very far away. And then you actually directly command over the ships that are under you during that real-time battle as in a simulation game. And you can do that with every task you do on the map. So it's completely, the simulation part was not eliminated, but 4X layer of the game was simply added on top of that. So it's a bit different experience. That means you have double the resources because you have your own resources like we had in the previous game, like in any simulation game. You have basically money. So you level up. You have experience. You have your own garage where you store your ships, and you customize each individual ship you wish to command. And you have money. You need to solve missions to get your own funds and everything, pretty much as in a simulation game. And once you reach the 4X elements, once they are unlocked to you, you need to level up to a certain degree and get reputation to be able to be the commander of your entire faction. After that, you have a second economy, basically, which is global resources, which are used to create, let's say, for a better word, state assets. So that belongs to your faction. You're governing it, but it's not your personal money. So you can't have your faction earning funds, materials, resources, and everything, and then build ships that are yours. So you cannot actually take that ship and personally command it. Your ships will listen to you, but you need to acquire your own ship with your own funds if you want to be your own ship, which can do what you want while you're commanding that ship. So it's actually both things are merged, and we were afraid how that's going to work, but it works pretty well.
Yeah, there sounds like there's a lot of systems to this game. How have you been balancing everything?
That was also a very challenging thing to do. Main point what we had to do, and we don't want to get players the wrong impression, is we had to scale back on some of the systems. So definitely, when you compare this game to some, let's say, some very well known and familiar hardcore 4X game, this game does not go to such depths as dedicated 4X game. It has all of the 4X elements, but they are scaled back to a bit, let's say, light elements. So they don't go in a almost manager style. It's much more lightened up, and when it's eased a little bit, it works better with the other functions. And that was done with everything. With the RPG system, it's not as in-depth and complicated RPG system as it's, say, I don't know, in Skyrim or some game of that sort. but all of the elements exist. And the idea was to use all the elements from other genres that are merged in this type of game. Idea was to use all these elements to increase the feeling of a simulation game, not to replace them or to simply have completely different types of games in one. It's all balanced to add to the same feeling.
I think I get what you're saying. It sounds like there's more genres here at the cost of depth, if
Yes.
I'm understanding this correctly. Is that a cause for concern for, say, the hardcore 4X people who might be looking for, that experience, and it comes up, short in their minds?
Well, it's possible. It's a problem with all hybrid genres, definitely. But I think I'm quite confident we created a pretty unique experience. It's different. Players that are definitely hooked on hardcore 4X games, they will probably find it a little bit strange, maybe at first, but once they get into the game, I think most players will appreciate the both things they can do. So you don't have to. You don't have to. In our previous game, there was a constant stream of real-time battles. So it was like a simulation game: battle. In this, when you're traveling to a place of battle or any action, any mission you want to do, you can actually open a star chart and you can continue when you're traveling for, I don't know, a lot of time because the space is really huge. You can simply use other parts of the game to do things while you're, for example, flying. So, and once you get there, you don't have to remain on that map and always look at the stationary map and simply move objects around into the plane or something. You can then go back to the real-time simulation and simply enjoy the battle itself. So you can go back and forth. It doesn't exclude each other. So I think it's going to be a bit. It's going to take some time from people to get used to if they came from hardcore dedicated genres. But I'm quite confident they're going to like this.
Interesting. Now, shifting back to Starpoint Gemini 2 for a bit, this one actually came out on the Xbox One not too long ago, if I'm remembering correctly. Did you guys handle the conversion process there?
Yes.
And what were the challenges in bringing a game like Starpoint Gemini to a console?
Well, there were two main challenges. One was optimization because the game is we use our own engine. That engine is quite advanced by now and developed, but it doesn't have let's say very low hardware demands. So on PC, people simply had a large variety of hardware to acquire and simply boost their performance. On Xbox, that was not the case. So it's a single machine with a single setup. So we had to go very far in creating optimizations for the game to be able to run smoothly or sufficiently smooth to pass the certification of Microsoft. That was the one thing. And the second problem was with the controls, because the game has a lot of controls. It's not a 3-button game, definitely, and placing all of that on several controller buttons was not an easy task. We actually lost a lot of time, and we found a way to make it quite easy to control on Xbox controllers. And with Warlords, we took what we learned from the second game and we implemented controller support immediately, and we refined it since then, since the start of the early access. So on Warlords, the controls are even much better because they're being refined for the last several months. But these were the two most difficult tasks, where we realized why not most of games that are on the same level of, let's say, complexity, they did not get ported to consoles. And when we made port of Serpent Gemini 2, we actually pretty much realized why. So it's just not that easy to do. So we did it. It was well accepted on Xbox, and we're just going to continue doing that now. So now that we know that there's an audience on Xbox, that was another thing we didn't know that. We had a certain, let's say, fear. We didn't know if the players on consoles will actually accept. For a console game, this would be a hardcore game. But it was well accepted. There are a lot of players that wanted something like that to exist on consoles. So we were a good surprise. So yeah, I think we're going to continue that.
That's good to hear. It's like, believe me, I was surprised to learn that this game came to the Xbox One because it's like this isn't the kind of game you usually see on consoles. For usual because the controller isn't well known for handling games of this magnitude. But I mean, making it work is certainly a laudable goal. And would this just be in the Xbox ecosystem, or would you be looking to do a PlayStation version of, say, Warlords down the line?
Well, for now, we don't have direct plans to make a PlayStation version. Controllers be easy to fix now, but the problem is our own engine, so it would have to be basically reprogrammed to OpenGL. So that's on this size of game that would be a very very long and costly job. So I think if we don't get some other solution, or for some future project, if we don't transfer to some other engine that's easier to port to different platforms, I think we're gonna remain on PC and Xbox.
That makes sense. Especially if you have to do an entire engine conversion to get onto the platform. Now, so you've mentioned the engine a few times. Can you go more into depth in how it was created and all that?
Well, it's basically it's the third iteration of the engine we created for the first game back in 2010. That was DirectX 9, I think, engine at that time. So the game was 3D, but the movement and everything was on 2D plane. So after that, we created the engine for Starport Gemini 2. It was a very very heavy upgrade of the existing engine with a lot of new features. It was transferred to DirectX 11, and it was full 3D with 3D movement, with all the cameras, effects, and everything that was expected from a game then. And Warlords is created on a third iteration of the same engine. It's DirectX 12, and it's quite upgraded version. And sad thing is that this is possibly the last iteration of our engine, because our programmers are in love with our engine. They want to continue using it until they're dead, because it's their child. It's what our main programmer spent the last, I think, 16 years of his life are in this engine, and he doesn't want to quit it, but the business model would dictate probably a different approach, because between all projects we need at least 1 year to upgrade the engine. So that's very costly and expensive and lengthy thing to do. So we might have to abandon it and switch to some other engine, but we're gonna have to convince our programmer or kill it before that.
You said this new iteration was based on DirectX 12, right? That means the game will only be available on Windows 10?
Yes, it will definitely be for a Windows 10, but for now, for example, it works perfectly normal on Windows 8. The thing is, when we do the last checkups and everything, we're gonna have to verify first if it works on 100% of Windows 8 platforms, because the previous engine was not supposed to work on, for example, Windows XP, and it worked. I honestly have no idea to this day how it worked. It was not supposed to work. On all checks, it was not supposed to work, but it actually worked. So we supported the older versions of Windows. At this point, we actually don't have any Windows 7, for example, in the studio. We have a lot of Windows 8, Windows 10, and it works on all of them. So we'll see. If it continues to work, it's gonna definitely be supported platform. But judging by DirectX, it shouldn't. But we'll see how it works. If it's not a problem to support it with minor changes, we'll definitely add that support. That's not a problem. If it requires 6 months of work, then we won't. But for now, it works on all Windows except XP. It doesn't work on that. Definitely, this time it's checked. It doesn't work.
Right. So before we continue, we have a trailer to show Starpoint Gemini Warlords.
Yeah, give me one moment.
It's the cinematic trailer. It's about 2.5 minutes here.
A little over that, but not much. But yeah. All right, and I am ready to go.
All right. So proceed.
Play it cool.
Home. A place in the world. A bright future. Sounds like a different life today. They left us here to die. A fate I will not easily accept.
All right.
I don't know what awaits us in this place. We need a new home. A new life. Just one chance to repent for our father's sins. We will build our cities and our ships again. But will the people of Gemini think we deserve another chance?
Okay. Whoa. A little bit of feedback. Anyway. So shifting focus a bit. What can you tell us about the lore and the universe and the world building about Starpoint Gemini?
Does somebody have the stream going?
Somebody might. Like, there was some audio weirdness there.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I don't know where it's originated.
okay, I think it sounds like everything's fixed.
Okay. Well, the lore of the Star Gemini is it's connected in all three games. The players don't actually have to play all three games because it's a different. The main character is different, so the angle of the story is different, and it continues from one game to another, but from a completely different angle. So it's not necessary to play all three games to get what's happening. But in short terms, it would be that Gemini as a system is actually just one province of the huge entity called Earth Empire. So Gemini is one separated system. That's a colony. That was a colony, and it's one of many colonies. It's not the only one. The special thing in all these colonies is that there's only one entrance to the colony. It's physically very far away from Earth and the Earth main space around Earth and solar system. And you can only travel there using these gates constructed on wormholes called star points. So each imperial province has one star point. So there's star point Gemini, there's star point Sirius, star point Orion, and in all provinces one star point. In Gemini, it's a special thing where the fabric of space and the let's say anomalies and disorders that exist in Gemini, they are very unique, and they prevent a lot of things that's normal to building an empire in other systems. But also, Gemini has one advantage that no other province ever had. You can see that during the game. So in Gemini, there are a lot of planets, and all of them are inhabitable planets. So there are no dead planets, there are no moons, there are 2 suns, hence the name Gemini, and a lot of inhabitable planets. So that helped Gemini to become the largest and most populated province of the empire. Of course, then they wanted to live on their own, because Earth is something very far, very out of reach, and they don't want them to give them commands and everything. So it sparked the first Gemini War. That was a war of secession from the empire. That war ended with the destruction of Starpoint and its closure. So effectively, empire was defeated, but Gemini was on its own after that. That's the end of the first game. So they had no connection and no way to reach the empire, and vice versa. So what happened is citizens start to create their own groups. Eventually, that became separate states in Gemini, and all the entire system became a very advanced, technically advanced and upgraded system, completely with no connection to the empire. In the second game, we are following the imperial rebel groups. That's the faction that was created from all of the remaining imperial forces in Gemini after that defeat. They mustered enough strength to gather themselves in a single faction, and they actually stood their ground and succeeded to live as one of the factions in Gemini. But all of the other ones tried to destroy them, of course, and eventually they succeeded. But at the end of the second game, they also, as the last thing they succeeded to do in Gemini before perishing, they actually succeeded to find a way to reopen the gate to Empire. The reaction was, of course, everybody in Gemini was very much afraid that Empire will now rush through back with their armies, armadas, and fleets and reconquer Gemini, because Empire is very, very strong. It really did happen. They did rush through Gemini, through Starpoint. They did invade it, entire Gemini, but not to conquer it, as everybody thought, but to flee and save themselves. Because in the meantime, in these 20 years that Starpoint was closed, on the other side, in the Imperial main space, there was a strange, let's say, hybrid alien invasion that actually wiped out the entire empire. And the citizens of Gemini at that point have no idea that the empire doesn't exist anywhere anymore. And they were not invaded, but the empire came to save themselves. And they didn't know that, but destroyed them completely, because they were defending from an invasion that never happened. And they saved themselves again. These are only the fast remarks, not the whole story. And in Warlords, that's the last game. Main character is actually one of the refugees from the solar system that came through Starpoint that's now regularly open, but there's nothing on the other side. So player is leading a group of survivors from the solar system to Gemini, because they know humans remained only in Gemini in some form. So they're trying to escape from destroyed empire and find themselves a new life in Gemini. And throughout Warlords, you're going to follow the story that citizens of Gemini, they don't know who you are. All they know is that you came through Starpoint. In their mind, you are Empire. Of course, you're not, but they think you are. And everything you do, they'll be convinced that you're trying to reestablish the Empire again. So you're going to have a very hard time to get your foothold and to find the future in Gemini and assure everybody else that you're not here to destroy them. And that's what the story of Warlords follow.
Okay, that's a lot. Like that.
Yeah, that's all 3 games, of course. And that's only a short version.
I suppose my follow-up question is, how do you all keep track of all this lore?
Well, it's written down. I don't keep track of it in my mind, definitely.
No, I get that, but I mean more. Do you have like a person who's like dedicated to, keeping track of the story and continuity and all that stuff?
Yes. On the first 2 games, most of the story writing was done actually by me, and I'm now also involved in that. But since I have a lot of other things to do, a lot of the story was done by a different team member. But yeah, he's definitely coordinating, and we have to be careful not to get lost in all of that, because besides everything that I just told, and which is a short version, there is also, of course, a number of DLCs that were released for the second game and will be released for Warlords as well. So it's quite a complicated story, but it's a very big universe. You can't have a simple story in that.
No, of course. Which is why it's really important to make sure you keep, continuity flow is there, so make sure events don't contradict each other and so on and so forth.
It happens sometimes. You don't have to worry about that. We sometimes get things that are so ridiculous, and we actually don't notice about that for a couple of weeks or months, and then we are correcting it afterwards. But it's on rare occasions, but it can get sometimes very funny.
Any examples come to mind?
Maybe there was a character in the first game. It was Thomas Scott. It was a scientist. It was a very formidable scientist, very well known. Everybody liked him. He was working on a research of these anomalies that exist in Gemini, and he just looked just like any scientist geek in his mid-40s, and in the ending part of the first game, that man with his hugely packed science vessel tried to find a way to prevent the Gemini incident that happened. It's a huge blast of stasis things and everything that destroyed the entire system and closed the roomful. He tried to stop it. He was almost killed, but barely survived. So after that, in the second game, he had he didn't have one eye, and he was completely mutilated his face. And when we reintroduced him later in the DLCs, it was, of course, he has to be mutilated and everything, and we created a new art with the new graphics and everything. So he looked very good, except we didn't notice one thing, and that was that his eye patch was on a different eye in the original game, and in the later expansions, he actually had an eye patch on a different eye. So suddenly, one of his eyes actually grew back, and the other disappeared, and tiny details like that. So when you have a lot of stuff, you sometimes simply don't notice everything, and we were actually warned about that later by a community member that noticed something strange with his face.
I was about to ask, it makes sense that you're not going to catch everything, but I'm like, does the community catch this stuff?
Yeah, they do.
That's not surprising, given the tenacity of the hardcore at points, not just like specifically Starpoint Gemini, just in general. I've noticed that, people who are really into a thing will notice things that not even like the creators will notice.
That's definitely true. There are some players out there that they have more gameplay time in Starcraft Gemini 2 than I ever had. So it's quite normal that he eventually noticed things I didn't notice. So yeah, but they usually report that, then we make amends, we fix it, and it works. As long as we don't forget something really big.
Right. And so, how long has Warlords been in early access?
It was in March, in mid-March. It was 1 year. So on release on May 23rd, it's gonna be a little bit more than a year and 2 months. Approximately the same time as Starcraft Gemini 2. They were in early access for about the same time. Not planned, it just happened like that. But yeah, it's similar.
And how did the experience in this game's early access differ from the Starpoint Gemini 2 early access?
Given the community's suggestions and feedback, that was similarly good and useful. But in let's say the success of it and the sheer numbers, it was weaker. It was weaker, and judging by the comments of the people, in general, the perception of early access is not as positive as it was when we released Starcraft Gemini 2 early access. We were, I think, sixth or seventh game in early access. It was a very new program at that time, and we were one of the first that entered it at all. So the perception was positive. People expected a lot of it. They liked the idea of being included in the game development, and it was generally very, very positive and vibrant community. Right now, it's very positive with hardcore gamers, but a lot less people are ready to invest themselves immediately in early access. More of them are waiting for full release. I suspect it has something to do with a number of failures in early access. So the perception is not that positive anymore. Despite the fact that we had a very positive experience, there are a lot of not so well good experiences out there. So people are quite weary of this program.
Yeah, that's kind of a poisoning of the well situation, given the amount of unfinished games or languished games, just and flat out bad games that are floating in early access. See also Steam Greenlight. Probably not as bad, but there's definitely a kind of an air around Steam early access. And it's unfortunate because not every game fits the stereotype of being a broken, janky mess.
Early access was designed for games that would be finished, and that promise has been broken a few times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's like I don't know if there's anything that can rehabilitate the image of early access at this point, barring like a complete reboot or something, like Steam is doing with Greenlight. So it's unfortunate, but it's just kind of the way things are going, the way things went.
Yes.
That being said, would you do early access again for a hypothetical fourth iteration of Starpoint Gemini, or another game, or just again?
Possible, but definitely after this experience, I think if we'll be doing early access again, we're not in general against it, but it would probably be quite different. First, we would aim for much shorter early access, and we'd try to enter early access with a way more complicated, completed game. The thing is, we liked what Steam said about early access when it was first released a few years ago. That they actually they insisted that our game is as less complete as possible. It was their demand. So they said no chance, betas and stuff like that, no way. It has to be early alpha, because then people can actually they can impact as much as possible on the game development. So we actually like that idea. It was very good, very successful, and it went well. With this game, we already noticed that players expected a lot more completed game, because also there were a number of game studios that saw the opportunity, and they used early access not as a way to develop the game with community, but as a way to stage two releases. So they basically there were a number of games that released. Well, actually, the game was finished completely, and they simply locked some features, and then released it on early access, got featuring and everything, and then in a few months they simply unlocked the rest of the game and went to the full release. And people felt uh, part of the players felt cheated, because everything they said and suggested for game were never accepted, because they wouldn't be accepted at all, because the studio actually completed the game. They just wanted something else. They had no idea. They had no desire to actually develop the game with the community. But the other part of people got used to the idea that, well, early access games are actually complete games. There are few things missing, but it's a full game which I get for less money. So that was a general opinion of early access games. And when we went out with Warlords, we tried to do the same thing as with the second game. We're gonna roll out as unfinished project, but playable as possible, and then we're gonna mold it to the desires of the community. And it didn't work like that. So if we would repeat it, definitely we'd go for a shorter early access, with the first version being much more complete than it was before. Simply, early access changed. I will not say that I like it or I don't like it, but it just changed, and we have to adapt to it.
I think that's sensible. You know, it's like your plan was congruent with an earlier iteration of early access, basically. And by the time you got to Warlords here, the ecosystem had changed.
Yes, and we probably didn't adapt fast enough, but we'll adapt now.
Yeah. That's nothing that will hurt the actual release of the game, will it?
No. This game is on schedule. Its early access is nearly finished, so it won't have any repercussions in this game. But it's something we'll consider for the next game, because we have to consider it. It has a real life ramifications, so it can't be ignored anymore.
Right. So, is there anything left to do on the game aside from polish, bug checks, and the like?
Yes, there is. I mean it as opposed to the version available to public now. So our internal version, which is just we're finishing some testings and balancing issues, optimization stuff. Our internal version is more completed than the one currently available to public, but it was done deliberately so that the release version actually has a more significant difference than the early access version. So what's left is a lot of optimization, bug fixes. We're going to be adding one entire localization. So game will be translated to German. It's going to be available on release, and more languages will likely come after release, post release date. We also have to unlock the entire campaign. Only a small fraction of campaign is available in current version. That will be, of course, unlocked fully on release, and a few more graphic things, features and stuff. But it's all going well. It's going to be completed. But yeah, there will be a difference between this version and the release version, because it has to be. We didn't want to have the beta version that's basically completely the same, and then upon release we will actually show the people the same version they saw in beta. So we had to save something for the end.
Of course. So we're getting low on time here, so just a couple more questions. Is there going to be a physical version of this game, like the previous two iterations on PC?
As far as I know, yes. Publishers.
Um,
Got some weird feedbacking there.
Sorry?
yeah. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. You kind of faded out there for a minute. So you were saying?
Yes, there will be. Our publishers are working on the retail version, so it's going to be available.
Okay. Is that like Europe only?
As far as I know, yes. Yes.
That's fine.
The market will still have a pretty good retail. From what we heard, US is not a good retail market anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. If PC games get a physical release these days, it's usually for the European market. Maybe a specific European market like Germany sees a lot of sim games, for example. But yeah, over here, it's pretty much all digital. I mean, you still get occasional physical releases, but even then, it's just like literally a disc with the executable file for Steam on it.
Yeah, it's usually like specialty retailers that make custom
Mm-hmm.
physical editions in the US.
And finally, can you tell us any of your DLC plans at this point?
Only thing I can tell you is that there will be quite a lot of DLCs. That's the only sure thing I can tell you, because we had on previous game people. This game is single player, so people expected the single player experience and a lot of single player gaming and a lot of missions and a lot of lore depth and everything. So they asked for a lot of additions with the previous game, more than we actually planned to make. Things we did with previous game was we created a DLC called Origins. It was an entire first game recreated in the new engine of the second game, and it was available for free. So I think it's among the biggest DLCs ever created for any game. And they asked for more, but the system we used with SPG2 did not allow for too many expansions to be added. So what we did was we simply changed the system, and Warlord system will allow for a lot more agile and a large number of modifications and DLCs. So there is going to be quite a lot of DLCs for this game. We hope it's going to live for a long time, because the same thing happened with the second game, and this is like Starpoint Gemini 2 on heavy steroids. So we're hoping for the same thing here, but we're now prepared to act on that and pump out DLCs and expand the story as long as people want.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Sounds like this game is going to have a lot of post-launch support.
Yeah.
Right. So that'll about do it. One last check from my colleagues here if they have any more questions.
I'm good.
All right. So yeah, the game is Starpoint Gemini Warlords. It's currently in early access. Full release on May 24th?
May 23rd.
May 23rd. Okay, and it's currently priced at $30. Will that price increase upon full release?
Yes, the price will be changed once more, and the a bit specific thing is that the price will be changed one day before release. A long story why, but we announced it everywhere where we could, because we want all the people that want to use the early access price, they should be able to do that, and we try to make sure that they're not surprised, because the price will be changed on May 22nd. The price will be $34.99 US dollars for the full release version, and there's also going to be a deluxe version. I'm not actually sure what will be the exact price of that, but it's going to have a quite a nice bundle of additional stuff to the main game.
All right, good to hear. So, yeah, if you're interested in buying this game, I recommend buying it in the next week before the price goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, about a week before full release. So yeah, it's available on Steam. Is it just Windows, or is it available on Mac and Linux as well?
Windows only. Unfortunately, no Mac and Linux version.
Okay, is that a thing that might happen down the line, or is it just going to be Windows?
Well, let's say it's 90% sure it's not going to happen. Not with this game, at least. The same problem as with PlayStation 4. Same reason.
Gotcha. Like, all right. So that'll about do it for this installment. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our alpha episode. We'll be having Dmitry Kylan of Bandai Namco Games. We're going to be talking about Chroma Squad. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully you'll join us then. And until such time, I wish you good gaming.
Thank you.